Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
This Day in Sports History. And welcome back to This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Podcast Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sports. Learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. It's June 13th, and on this day in 1935, it was the Cinderella Man bout in Madison Square Garden. 26-year-old Max Baer was a hard-hitting heavyweight champ. So hard a puncher was he that 5 years earlier in 1930, his opponent Frankie Campbell died as a result of the beating he had taken by Baer. Ernie Schaff was another boxer that suffered damage at the hands of Baer, and when he died after a bout with Primo Carnera, people pointed at the beating Baer had given him in an earlier fight as partial cause for Schaff's death. Baer had become heavyweight champ 364 days prior to this fight with a defeat of Carnera. And the other corner on this night was 29-year-old James J. Braddock. He had fought in the light heavyweight class and in his early boxing years amassed a record of 44-2-2 with 21 of his 44 wins coming as knockouts. In 1929, in a fight with Tommy Loughran, Braddock lost a 15-round decision and broke his right hand during that fight. After that, he struggled, losing 20 of his next 33 fights. And he wasn't just struggling in the ring, he was struggling outside of it as well. This was the Great Depression, and times were tough for just about everyone. He gave up boxing and became a longshoreman. But even that was not enough, and he wound up on the New Jersey government relief roll. In 1934, he was offered a spot in the ring again against Corn Griffin. Braddock was supposed to be a sacrificial lamb, but he was hoping for a decent payday. Instead, Braddock knocked out Griffin in the third round. In March 1935, he won another fight, drawing the attention of Baer's camp as a credible fighter, but an easy mark and payday in a title defense. Braddock entered the ring on this night 19 pounds lighter than Baer and was a huge 10-1 underdog. But Baer didn't seem to take the fight seriously. Ringside accounts talk of the heavyweight champ clowning around during the fight and not acting like a true champion. Through the first 6 rounds, Baer looked lethargic as both boxers traded punches and plodded around the ring. In the 7th, Baer's mentality shifted and he started landing hard body shots to Braddock. But Braddock stood tall and took every one of them, returning counter punches in the process. Baer was surprised at how much punishment Braddock was taking and not wilting. The fight went the full 15 rounds, with Braddock winning a unanimous decision and taking the heavyweight title to shock the boxing world with a real-life rags-to-riches tale. Sports writer Damon Runyon coined the phrase the Cinderella Man to describe Braddock in his write-up of the fight. That later became the title of the 2005 movie directed by Ron Howard and starring Russell Crowe as Braddock and Reneé Zellweger as his wife, May. In 1997, an unlikely hero emerged in the NBA Finals. This was Game 6 between the Chicago Bulls and the Utah Jazz. The Bulls were up 3-2 and hoping to close out the series at home. With the game tied at 86 and the clock winding down under 20 seconds, everybody in the building, watching on television, listening on the radio, knew that the ball was going to wind up in Michael Jordan's hands. In a timeout prior to this, though, Jordan envisioned what would happen, and he looked into the eyes of his teammate, Steve Kerr, and he said, "This is your chance. I know Stockton is going to come over and help on me, and I'm going to come to you." Kerr stared back, and despite having missed several key buckets in the series already, replied, "I'll be ready. I'll knock it down." Jordan didn't have to be clairvoyant to know the double team was coming, and when it did, he spotted Kerr wide open at the free throw line. This is what it sounded like that night.
Bumped by Shandon Anderson, handed to Michael. 6 seconds, 5. Michael in traffic to Kerr, 15-footer. Burying the jumper, 5
Kerr's bucket put the Bulls up 2, but there were still 5 seconds on the clock, and the Jazz got the ball at midcourt. More than enough time for Utah to get a good shot to tie or even win it. But Scottie Pippen anticipated the pass, knocked it toward the backcourt, dove on the ground for the ball, and in the process fed Tony Kukoc for the decisive dunk to give the Bulls the 4-point win. It was the 5th of their 6 titles they would win. At the championship celebration a few days later, Kerr had some fun in his retelling of the discussion in the huddle prior to his big shot.
And there have been some misconceptions about what actually happened. I wanted to clear it up. When we called timeout with 25 seconds to go, we went into the huddle, and Phil told Michael, he said, "Michael, I want you to take the last shot." And Michael said, "You know, Phil, I don't feel real comfortable in these situations, so maybe we ought to go in another direction." And then Scotty came in and said, "You know, Phil, Michael said in his commercial that, you know, he's been asked to do this 26 times and he's failed. So why don't we go to Steve?"
On this night in 1989, it was the coronation of the Detroit Pistons as NBA champs and the sad farewell to one of the league's greatest players. The Pistons were playing the magicless Los Angeles Lakers. In the first 3 games of the series, the Pistons had dominated the 2-time defending champs. The Lakers had a little fight left in them, though. Powered by James Worthy's 40 points on the night, the Lakers shot out to a 16-point lead in the first quarter. But Joe Dumars, Vinnie Johnson, and Isaiah Thomas counterpunched, combining for a 51 to bring Detroit back. But it was the basketball Buddha, James Edwards, that drove the nail in the Lakers' coffin, scoring 13 points in the fourth quarter to give the Pistons the 105-97 win and their first NBA championship in 40 years, when they used to be known as the Fort Wayne Pistons. With 19 seconds left in the game, the Lakers removed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, receiving a standing ovation from the LA Forum crowd. It was Kareem's final game in his 20-year career, retiring then as the NBA's all-time leading scorer. Of course, that mark has since been eclipsed by LeBron James. In 1953, Ben Hogan won his 4th U.S. Open Golf Championship in his 5th appearance. This one may have been his easiest, if playing the hardest course under the toughest conditions with a horde of the best golfers on the planet chasing you can be called easy. He started his final round on this day with a 1-shot lead over Sam Snead. And remember, this is the time when they played 36 holes on the final day. And despite being more than 4 years removed from his near-fatal car crash, Hogan was still in a lot of pain. The mere act of walking 36 holes was not easy. But the wee Iceman powered through. He shot a 73 in the morning round, and then after shooting 38 on the front 9 to open the afternoon round, Hogan got it going on the incoming 9, carding a backside 33 to run away with the U.S. Open trophy, winning by 6 shots over Snead. His birdie 3 on the last hole brought the crowd to its feet. 1953 may be the finest year of golf by any person who's walked the planet. He won the Masters in April. A few weeks after his U.S. Open win on this day, Hogan would win the British Open in his only appearance. In fact, there would be only one tournament he entered that year that he did not win, and that was the Greenbrier Open, won instead by Snead on his home course. And in 1997, Detroit Red Wings defenseman Vladimir Konstantinov was seriously injured when the limousine he was riding in crashed into a tree. The Red Wings were less than a week removed from winning their first Stanley Cup in 42 years. On this day, the Red Wings were celebrating their Stanley Cup win at a golf tournament. About 9 o'clock that evening, Konstantinov, along with teammate Slava Fetisov and team masseur Sergei Monatsikhanov, hired a limo to take them home. Around 9:30 p.m., the limo, driven by Richard Nida, slammed into a tree along Woodward Avenue in Birmingham, Michigan. All 4 were taken to the hospital. Fetisov escaped with only minor injuries and would be back on the ice the following season. But for Konstantinov and Monatsikhanov, the prognosis was not good. Konstantinov suffered a severe head injury that would forever keep him wheelchair-bound. Monatsikhanov was paralyzed from the waist down and no longer able to work. Nida apparently fell asleep at the wheel, and he was driving with a suspended license at the time. he would spend 9 months in jail. Time now for today's non-sports Did You Know? Rosie the Riveter was not the only 1940s symbol for women's empowerment. There was also Wendy the Welder, Bertha the Burner, and Jenny on the Job. That's all for today. If you have a moment, would you be so kind as to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts? That would be greatly appreciated by me, your humble host. Thanks to all who have, and I'll be back tomorrow with another edition of This Day in Sports History, a proud member of the Sports History Podcast Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sports. Learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.